What if the Seattle Seahawks are about to trade away a quarterback who hasn't even had his real shot yet, but could become something special? Jalen Milroe might already be on the edge of a decision that could change everything in Seattle, and nobody saying it loudly. But behind the scenes, the real story is just starting to unfold. What if the Seattle Seahawks already know something about their quarterback future, and it doesn't include Jalen Milroe? Because right now, this isn't just a simple depth chart situation. On the surface, it looks normal. Milroe is developing, learning, waiting his turn. But when you really zoom in, the reality feels very different. There's a growing sense that no matter how much potential he has, his path to becoming the guy in Seattle might already be blocked. And that's where Sam Darnold changes everything. Just a couple of years ago, Darnold was seen as a reclamation project, a former top pick who never quite lived up to expectations. But now, the narrative has completely flipped. He's playing confident football, putting up real production, and more importantly, he's winning. Inside the building, that matters more than anything else. Suddenly, Darnold isn't just a temporary solution, he's starting to look like stability. Like a quarterback the Seahawks can actually trust moving forward. And when a team finds that, they don't usually go searching for uncertainty. Which puts Milroe in a tough spot. Because even if he develops perfectly, even if he cleans up his accuracy and decision-making, when exactly does he get his chance? He's not jumping Darnold anytime soon. And he's also competing with Drew Lock for backup reps, meaning valuable game experience could stay out of reach. That's the part nobody really talks about. Development isn't just about talent, it's about opportunity. And right now, Milroe might not have enough of it. So now the Seahawks are facing a quiet but very real question. Do you hold on to a high-upside quarterback with no clear path to play? Or do you move him while his value is still rising, before the rest of the league starts asking the same thing? Because if Seattle already believes they've found their answer at quarterback, then keeping Milroe might not make as much sense as it seems. But this is where the situation quietly gets complicated. Right now, the Seattle Seahawks might be sitting on something far more valuable than people realize, and it has nothing to do with what Jalen Milroe has already proven on the field. It's about timing. Because in the NFL, value isn't just created by performance, it's created by opportunity. And heading into this draft cycle, the quarterback market feels off. Teams are desperate, but the options aren't convincing. The 2026 class lacks clear elite talent, and when that happens, front offices start getting aggressive. That's where Milroe suddenly becomes very interesting. If he had stayed in college one more year, there's a real argument he could have entered this draft as one of the top quarterbacks available. Some scouts even believe he'd be right near the top of the board, especially with players like Dante Moore choosing to stay in school and avoid this weaker class altogether. And that creates a unique window. Instead of gambling on an unproven rookie, some teams might look at Milroe and see a better option. Someone with elite physical tools, real game experience at Alabama, and a full year inside an NFL system. A quarterback you don't have to start immediately, but can develop the right way. That kind of profile doesn't always hit the market. Especially not at a time when demand is quietly rising. Because think about it, if you're a quarterback-needy team, do you reach for a prospect you're unsure about, or take a swing on a player like Milroe, who already has a higher ceiling than most of this class? That's where the Seahawks could capitalize. They're not desperate at quarterback, they're not forced into anything, which means they have leverage. And in situations like this, leverage turns into draft picks, and draft picks turn into roster depth, flexibility, and long-term control. But here's the risk. Selling now might mean selling early. Because if Milroe ever puts it all together, even for a brief stretch, his value doesn't just rise, it explodes. And that's exactly why this decision might be more dangerous than it looks. Right now, the Seattle Seahawks aren't just thinking about quarterbacks, they're thinking about control. And that's where this entire Jalen Milroe situation starts to shift in a completely different direction. Because this isn't only about potential, it's about assets. When you look at the Seahawks' current position heading into the draft, one thing becomes clear. They're not exactly loaded with picks. And for a front office led by John Schneider, that matters more than people think. This is a GM who has built his reputation on finding value in the draft, not just at the top, but deep into later rounds. But you can't find value if you don't have enough swings. And that's where the pressure quietly builds. Because if Seattle feels like this draft class has more depth than top-end talent, the strategy changes. It's no longer about chasing one big-name prospect. It's about stacking picks, moving around the board, and creating as many opportunities as possible to hit on contributors. That kind of approach requires flexibility. And right now, Milroe might be one of the few movable pieces that actually gives them that. Think about it, he's young, athletic, and still viewed as a high-upside quarterback. That alone holds value across the league, especially for teams willing to take a long-term gamble. Even if the return isn't massive, turning one developmental player into multiple draft assets could completely reshape how Seattle attacks this draft. More picks means more depth means more competition, and more competition builds stronger rosters. That's the philosophy. But here where it gets tricky. Because once you turn a player like Milroe into picks, you're betting that those picks become something meaningful. And in the NFL, that's never guaranteed. For every late-round success story, there are multiple misses that quietly disappear. So now the question isn't just about Milroe anymore. It's about whether Seattle trusts its ability to draft and develop multiple players more than it trusts developing one potential star at quarterback. And that's where this decision quietly becomes a gamble. Behind the scenes, this isn't just a front office decision, it's a locker room one. And that's where the Seattle Seahawks situation with Jalen Milroe starts to feel very different from the outside narrative. Because internally, there's real belief. Not hype, not media buzz, actual belief from people inside the building, starting with head coach Mike Macdonald. Reports and comments throughout the season suggest that Macdonald doesn't just see Milroe as a project. He sees him as a legitimate future starter if things develop the right way. And that matters more than anything. Coaches don't invest in players they don't believe in, especially not quarterbacks. The time, the reps, the attention, it all signals something deeper. And with Milroe, the message has been consistent: work ethic, growth, and untapped upside. But it goes beyond the coaching staff. Inside the locker room, Milroe has quietly built a reputation. Teammates respect him, not because he's flashy or loud, but because of how he handles adversity. This is a player who's already faced real setbacks, dating back to his time at Alabama where he was benched, doubted, and pushed to the edge of losing his role completely. And he didn't fold. He came back, earned trust, and kept working. That kind of resilience doesn't go unnoticed in an NFL locker room. Players see that, they respond to that, and over time that builds something you can't measure on a stat sheet: credibility. Which creates a different kind of pressure for Seattle. Because trading a player like Milroe isn't just about giving up potential, it's about sending a message. A message to the locker room about what the organization values and how quickly belief can shift. And sometimes, those decisions linger longer than expected. Because if you move on from someone the team believes in, you better be right. And that's where things inside Seattle could quietly start to shift. This is where the conversation around Jalen Milroe completely shifts, because now, it's not about what he is, it's about what he could become. And that's where things get dangerous. Because when you start evaluating ceiling instead of current production, the comparisons get bold. Some scouts and fans have already started drawing parallels to elite dual-threat quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen. Not because Milroe is there yet, but because the raw tools are impossible to ignore. We're talking about rare athleticism. Milroe isn't just mobile, he's explosive. A quarterback who can outrun defenders, extend plays, and turn broken situations into big gains. His speed alone changes how defenses have to prepare. And when you combine that with his arm strength, that's where it gets even more intriguing. Because he can make throws most quarterbacks won't even attempt. Deep shots, off-platform passes, tight window lasers downfield, the kind of plays that flip momentum instantly. When it works, it looks effortless, it looks special. But here's the problem. It doesn't always work. Accuracy, especially in the short and intermediate game, remains a real concern. There are moments where the decision-making feels rushed, times where he trusts his arm a little too much. And at the NFL level, those mistakes don't just stall drives, they change games. That's why he's such a difficult evaluation. Because you're not choosing between good and bad, you're choosing between outcomes. One path leads to a dynamic, game-changing quarterback who can take over the league. The other leads to inconsistency, missed opportunities, and a player who never fully puts it together. And teams get this wrong all the time. For every quarterback who develops into a superstar, there's another with similar tools who never quite reaches that level. That uncertainty is what makes players like Milroe so polarizing. So now the Seahawks are staring at the biggest question of all. Do you bet on what he is today, or what he might become tomorrow? Because if they guess wrong, they might be watching his breakout happen somewhere else. This is where everything comes down to one uncomfortable truth. There is no safe decision for the Seattle Seahawks when it comes to Jalen Milroe. Because no matter what they do, there's risk. If Seattle decides to trade him, they're betting against his future. They're saying that the flashes, the athleticism, the raw upside, it's not worth the wait. And maybe that works out. Maybe he never fully develops, never fixes the accuracy, and never becomes more than a what if. But what if he does? What if he lands in the right system with the right coaching and suddenly everything clicks? We've seen it before. Quarterbacks written off too early only to explode somewhere else. And if that happens with Milroe, the narrative flips instantly. Now it's not just a trade. It's a mistake. On the other side, keeping him isn't risk-free either. Because holding on to Milroe means committing time, reps, and a roster spot to a player who might never reach that ceiling. It means passing up potential draft capital, depth, or immediate contributors, all for a projection. And in a league where windows close fast, waiting too long can cost you just as much as moving on too early. That's the reality most fans don't want to admit. This isn't about right or wrong, it's about timing. Some fans believe Seattle is already quietly testing the market, seeing what kind of offers might be out there. Nothing confirmed, nothing official, but the kind of behind-the-scenes conversations that happen when a team is weighing both sides carefully. And if that's true, it means the decision might come down to one simple question. Which risk can you live with? Because either you trade him and risk regret, or you keep him and risk wasting an opportunity to improve the team right now. There's no middle ground. And whichever path they choose, it might define Seattle's future sooner than anyone expects. In the end, this isn't just about a backup quarterback. This is about a decision that could quietly shape the future of the Seattle Seahawks. Because when you step back and look at everything surrounding Jalen Milroe, it becomes clear there's no obvious answer here. On one side, the logic makes sense. You already have stability with Sam Darnold. You could use more draft capital. And Milroe, despite all his talent, doesn't have a clear path to see the field anytime soon. From a front office perspective, trading him feels practical. But football decisions aren't always about what's practical. Because on the other side, there's something much harder to measure. Belief, upside, the idea that if you just wait a little longer, you might unlock something special. Milroe isn't a finished product, and that's exactly what makes him dangerous to give up on. Players like this don't come around often, and when they do, they rarely follow predictable timelines. That's what makes this situation so complicated. Because if Seattle moves on too early, they're not just losing a developmental quarterback, they're risking the chance of watching him become a star somewhere else. And in today's NFL, where elite quarterbacks change everything, that's the kind of mistake that sticks with a franchise for years. At the same time, holding on to him means passing up opportunities now. More picks, more depth. More immediate help for a team trying to stay competitive. And if Milroe never reaches that ceiling, then the Seahawks are left wondering if they held on for too long. That's the balance. It's not about choosing the right move, it's about choosing the risk you're willing to live with. Because whether they trade him or keep him, one thing is almost guaranteed. This decision won't be forgotten. And if things go the wrong way, it won't just be questioned. It'll haunt them. And the scariest part, they might not realize which choice was wrong until it's already too late.